Imagine the most influential musician of all time, John Lennon, and imagine his stories about a UFO and about encountering aliens. My name is Beth, and I'm going to take a look at the connection between aliens and superstardom in this episode of Shed Show Talk.
Everybody's flying, I never touch the sky. There's UFOs over New York, and I ain't too surprised.
You just heard John Lennon singing about a UFO, and the line from his song, Nobody Told Me. And now we're going to show you some video and audio of John Lennon describing his UFO encounter. After that, I'm going to show you some other artwork that he did, and then we're going to talk about that alien encounter that Uri Geller talked about. Stay tuned.
Here, up there, I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river. It wasn't a helicopter, it wasn't a balloon, and it was so near.
And it looked what, sort of round, white,
just
luminescent, and silent?
Silent, and it looked dark, like black or grey in the middle, and had white lights, just looked like light bulbs, you know? Just going off, on, blink, 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 round the bottom, and on top was a red light.
There's a couple of quotes on your new album I found amusing and interesting enough to ask you about. Possession is 9/10 of the problem.
Oh, yeah.
That seems to be on your album. And did you really see a UFO?
I did really. I wouldn't have put it on, you know, if I hadn't seen it.
There's a little tiny note that people could miss if they don't look carefully down in one of the lower corners of your liner notes. It says, I saw a UFO September something, something, something. What was the story behind that? Where did that happen?
Well, I was in New York in an apartment, and I was just standing by the roof, and I looked left, and there was this thing about 100 yards away, and I could have hit it with a stone if I threw it. And it was really, I could have even seen it without my glasses, and I'm very short-sighted. And I was looking at it and thinking, what is it? What is it? You know, is it a helicopter? No, it's making no noise. Is it a balloon? You know, is it the blimp? Because there's all these lights around the bottom of it, flashing on and off.
It didn't say American Airlines on it, did it?
It didn't say anything. It didn't make a noise. And you know, one part of me all the time was saying, that's a UFO, you know. But some part of you doesn't want to believe it, you know.
Did you go to the authorities with that information?
Well, I didn't, because, you know, Lennon sees UFO. I mean, that's enough to get me kicked out for, you know, it's bad enough as it is.
I suppose. That's
why I almost took it off the album. But one time I said, pull it off. I'm going to get people with weird-looking eyes coming up to me saying, I've come from the saucer, you know.
And I've seen it too, yeah.
Yeah, and the other bit is they're going to say he's crazy, you know. But I thought, look, I saw it, you know, I don't care what anybody says, there it was, and nobody can explain what it was to me, so I said UFO, you know.
Amazing. This is in California.
No, this was in New York.
New York, of all places.
Below the height of the buildings. I mean, it was like, you know, if somebody had been in a higher building, they would have looked down on it.
Did you talk to anybody else that said that they saw it too?
I got a friend to call the police and call the newspapers the next day to check if anybody else had seen anything. And a couple of people had rung in and seen something in the same area at the same time as me.
People in New York are sometimes oblivious to reality, though. Things could be happening around them and they wouldn't even notice it. You know.
Well, I'll stick up for New York a bit. I think it's pretty real here, you know. It's just that, you know, I would never have noticed it if I hadn't happened to look out. You know, I looked around me and nobody else was looking out of windows or anything. The cars were going on, because it's quiet, it's very low. It's not that you expect a sort of Martian in the sky. It was below rooftop level, and it was just coasting around very quietly like a tourist, you know.
Amazing.
And it was just pot luck that I saw it.
Amazing.
Excuse the expression. And I was straight as a die. I was straight as a die.
So there you have an audio version of John Lennon in his own words, in his own tone of voice, describing his UFO encounter, which was also witnessed by his girlfriend at the time and was actually something he ended up drawing. So here we have a picture that was sold to an auctioneer. John Lennon had signed, dated this cartoon drawing of him and his girlfriend looking at the UFO. He describes the white lights at the bottom, the red big light on the top. He also kind of gives a bit of a size differential and where he was in New York. Here's another one of the drawings that John Lennon did about his UFO sighting in New York, and you can see it was drawn on the back of an envelope, and this envelope was something owned by John's former girlfriend. But one of the things I noticed about it isn't the drawing itself. Apart from the lights on the bottom, I found really interesting, or sort of the size he gave the lights. But that's besides the point. What I noticed about this is that people who have seen a UFO encounter, it shapes their lives. So they think about it, sing about it, write about it, talk about it, host interviews about it. It's just something that really stays with them. And it seems to be, based on what I'm seeing, that John Lennon was really impacted by his UFO sighting in New York. One of the stories about John Lennon that has captured my imagination so much is the story about his encounter with an alien. And in order to talk about his story, I have to introduce you to Uri Geller. Now, Uri Geller is an illusionist, but has also been tested by the CIA for his psychic abilities. And here you're looking at a picture of Uri bending an iPhone 6. Now, another interesting thing about Uri I found when I did some research on him is that he's been linked to Mossad, which is Israel's intelligence agencies. So he's tied to a few international intelligence agencies. He's also famous and hung out with the likes of Elton John, Michael Jackson, and John Lennon, just to name a few. And that he was seen as somebody that they trusted and confided in. Now, his story, according to his website, is that John Lennon and him talked about UFOs, which turned into a conversation, a private conversation, where John Lennon disclosed to Uri Geller that he had encountered aliens and that they left him a golden object that looks a little bit like an egg, and you can see it here. So on Uri Geller's website, which you're seeing at the top, is this story about Uri and John talking about John Lennon's alien encounter. And what it turns out is, of course, some people know that John Lennon used drugs, and that was something that Uri wondered about. But Uri had mentioned that in this case he didn't believe that that had anything to do with his stories, and that he never shared this story for years, nor did John. It was something that was kind of private. But when they were talking at an event, one of the things Uri said, and you can see it here on the screen right here, is, so I said to him, you know, John, not only do I believe in UFOs, but I've seen UFOs and I've photographed them. John then took me to a quieter corner and told me a story. And he talks about an encounter where, again, he found there was something that this light came from outside and in. So I want you to start paying attention to a couple elements here. Like in the Skrillex video that I did earlier that you can check out on our channel, these mega superstars have had these alien encounters, and there's always a light involved, which I find really interesting. In this case, the color of the light's not fully disclosed, but he basically got up, John Lennon got up, crossed to the door, flung it open, and the next thing he could remember were four thin-looking figures. And they came over to him and just stood there. Two of them held his hands, and the other two gently pushed his legs. Now, that's a detail that I don't often hear in UFO or alien disclosure stories. Pushing his legs. I'm not sure what that was about, and I can't clarify on that because there is no clarification on it anywhere that I've been able to find yet. And that they gently guided him into a tunnel of light, and he was shown all of his life. Now, what I also find interesting about this story is this line down here, and I'm just going to scroll to it right here. John Lennon put his hand in his pocket, pulled out the object the aliens had given him, and he gave it to Uri Geller. So the aliens gave the object to John Lennon gave the object to Uri Geller, and the rest, as we know, is history. Now, Uri wrote that he felt a great loneliness or sadness when he touched the object, but here's what I want to get back to, is whenever we talk about megastars or superstars like John Lennon, if they have encountered aliens, what I've noticed, you guys, is that there seems to be some correlation between having an encounter of the supernatural or paranormal kind and then having a career that is paranormally huge. And I actually want to pull up an image now here on the top that you're going to see, but it's from John Lennon's Wikipedia page. And what it says is that he was, obviously we know, an English singer, songwriter, and activist, but he's the most commercially successful and musically influential band in the history of popular music. Now, his fame was achieved at a time when the world population was just over 3 billion people. We now know that the Earth's population is over 7 billion people, and even though the world has doubled in size, John Lennon and the Beatles remain the most influential and the most commercially successful. So you're talking in excess of Lady Gaga, Justin Bieber, Michael Jackson, Celine Dion, who's huge in Vegas and around the world. You're talking about megastars. And yet here you have John Lennon himself, and I'm going to pull his picture back up. You have this man who lived 40 years on this planet being the most influential. So this man that you're looking at right now saw a UFO, encountered aliens, and had an object to tell about it. So my question to you is, as you do your research, is there a connection between alien encounter or supernatural encounter or paranormal encounter with human success or human growth? It's a wildly deep question, and I'm going to look at it more as I continue to investigate other mega stars who have had interactions with alien life forms. My name is Beth, and this has been an episode of Shed Show Talk.